Hi, and welcome to Storytime with Jocelyn and part 2 of Aladdin. We want to give a shout out to Papa Joe. Jocelyn wanted to say we love you. And we are going to read the rest of Aladdin today. And the last thing we remembered is the genie had just granted Aladdin's wish to turn into Prince Ali. So here we go. We are going to begin the rest of the story. Chapter 8. Jafar rushed into the throne room, holding a large scroll. "Sire," he called to the Sultan, "I have found a solution to the problem with your daughter." "Ark!" squawked Iago. "Problem with your daughter?" "It's right here." Jafar unfolded the scroll and began reading. "If a princess has not chosen a husband by her 16th birthday, then the Sultan shall choose her. For her." The Sultan nodded, but Jasmine hated all those suitors. "How can I choose someone she might hate?" "Not to worry, there is more," Jafar said, unrolling the scroll further. "In an event a suitable prince cannot be found, a princess may be wed to..." Interesting. "What?" the Sultan demanded. "Who?" "The royal vizier." Jafar looked up. "Why, that's me." "But I thought the law says only a prince can marry a princess," the Sultan said, reaching for the scroll. Jafar quickly set it on a table and picked up his staff. "Desperate times call for desperate measures, my lord." The snake head began to glow with hypnotic light. "Yes," the Sultan said, his eyes glazing over. "Desperate times." "You will order the princess to marry me," Jafar said confidently. "I know, that's gross, huh?" "I will order the princess to..." Rat-tat-tat-tat! The sound of trumpets blaring through the window. The Sultan blinked and turned toward the noise. What? I heard something." Instantly, the spell was broken. The Sultan rushed to the window and looked out, muttering. Jafar followed. A huge band was marching down the main street. A giant peacock moving slowly behind. Lions and bears in colorful painted cages rolled by. People filled the streets to see the grand procession approaching. "Make way for Prince Ali Ababwa!" the band leader sang. Behind him strung a majestic elephant, its trunk held broadly in the air. On its back, a canopy bounced up and down. From the canopy, Aladdin grinned and waved. Do you recognize the genie in any of this? Do you notice where Aladdin is? Who's the elephant? Is it Abu? The crowd roared with admiration. Dances whirled around him. Swordsmen marched in perfect step, and dozens of attendants walked alongside. Abu lumbered on proudly, and the carpet made a perfect cushion for Aladdin on Abu's bumpy back. The genie floated among the crowd, changing himself every few minutes into a drum major, a Harlem girl, an old man, a child, in every disguise. He told everyone what a splendid prince was approaching. By the time Aladdin got to the palace gates, he was the talk of Akrabar. His entire entourage, Abu, swordsmen, brass band, dancers and all, marched right into the throne room. As the Sultan and Jafar stared, Aladdin slid off of Abu's back and onto the carpet. "Your Majesty," Aladdin said, bowing in front of the Sultan, "I have journeyed from afar to seek your daughter's hand." "Prince Ali Ababwa," the Sultan said with a bright smile, "I'm delighted to meet you. This is my royal vizier, Jafar." Jafar did not look delighted at all. "I'm afraid, Prince Ababwa," Aladdin corrected him. "Whatever." Jafar said. You cannot just parade in here uninvited and... What a remarkable device, the Sultan explained, looking at the carpet. May I try? Why, certainly, Your Majesty, Aladdin said. He helped the Sultan onto the carpet. It took off, flying the Sultan around the room. As the old man hooted with delight, Jafar eyed Aladdin suspiciously. Just where did you say you were from? Before Aladdin could answer, the carpet swooped down and let the Sultan off. Well, this is a very impressive youth and a prince besides, lowering his voice. The Sultan said to Jafar, if we're lucky, you won't have to marry Jasmine after all. I don't trust him, Jafar said. The Sultan ignored him. Yes, Jasmine will like this one, and I'm sure I'll like Princess Jasmine, Aladdin said. Your Highness, Jafar blurted, on Jasmine's behalf, I must say, just let her meet me, Aladdin interrupted. I will win your daughter. None of them had seen Jasmine enter from the Mangerie with Raja behind her. How dare you, she said, standing alone, deciding my future. I am not a prize to be won. With that, she turned and stormed out, Jocelyn. Aladdin's heart sank. He was sure she liked him as a prince. He never thought this would happen. Don't worry, Prince Ali, the Sultan said. Just give her time to cool down. She'll warm to you. Aladdin and the Sultan walked into the Mangerie. Jafar watched them silently, then turned to Iago. I think it's time to say bye-bye to Prince Abubu. Chapter 9. For the rest of the day, Aladdin waited in the Mangerie. Jasmine's room was overheard, but she refused to come to the balcony. As night fell, Aladdin began to give up hope. What am I going to do? He moaned. I should have known I couldn't pull this off, stupid prince act. Abu looked at his master and swung his trunk in sympathy. All right, the genie said, looking up from a game of chess with the carpet. Here's the deal. If you want to court her, you have to tell her the truth. Just be yourself. No way, Aladdin said. If Jasmine found out I was really some crummy street rat, she'd laugh at me. She looked up at Jasmine's balcony and drew himself up straight. I'm going to go see her, he said. I've got to be smooth, cool, confident. The genie sighed. He knew Aladdin was in trouble. The carpet slid beneath Aladdin, lifting him up to Jasmine's balcony. Through her window, Aladdin can see her playing with Raja. Princess Jasmine, he called out. Jasmine turned and walked to the window. Who's there? It's me, said Aladdin. Then remembering his Prince Ali voice, he added, Prince Ali Ababwa. I do not want to see you, Jasmine snapped. As she turned back into the room, Aladdin stepped off the carpet and onto the balcony. Please, princess, give me a chance. Raja leapt into his path. Aladdin jerked away, almost losing his turban. Jasmine narrowed her eyes. Wait. Do I know you? You remind me of someone I met in the marketplace. Aladdin backed into the shadows. The marketplace? Why, I have servants who go to the marketplace for me, so it wouldn't have me been there that you have met. No, I guess not, Jasmine said, looking disappointed. A bee buzzed by Aladdin's ear. He moved to swat it until he heard it speak in the genie's voice. Enough about you, he said. Talk about her. Princess Jasmine, you're, beautiful, Aladdin said. Rich too, she said, and the daughter of the Sultan. Aladdin smiled. I know. A fine prize for any prince to marry, she said, playing along. Right. A prince like me. Right. A prince like you, Jasmine repeated, and every other swaggering peacock I've met. Go jump off a balcony. Jasmine turned and stroked into her chamber. Mayday, mayday, the genie said, still disgusted as disguised as a bee. Stop her! Want me to sting her? Buzz off, Aladdin replied. Okay, the genie said, but remember, be yourself. Yeah, right, Aladdin muttered as the genie flew under his turban and into the lamp. Jasmine looked over her shoulder. What? I said, you're right, Aladdin sighed. You aren't just some prize to be won. You should be free to make your own choice. Dejected, Aladdin turned away. He climbed over the railing and stepped off the balcony into space. No! Jasmine cried, but Aladdin didn't fall. He was hovering in midair. How did you do that? Jasmine said, stunned. It's a magic carpet, Aladdin said. Jasmine looked over the railing and touched the carpet. It's lovely. You don't want to go for a ride, do you? Aladdin gave her a helpful look. You could fly away and see the world. Is it safe? Jasmine asked. Sure, Aladdin held out his hand and smiled. Do you trust me? Do you trust me? Jasmine had heard those exact words before, said in the same exact way. Yes, she said softly, taking his hand. She stepped onto the carpet and took it off. It took off. Losing her balance, she fell into Aladdin's arms. He blushed, but he liked the feeling. And he could tell Jasmine did too. The carpet soared over the palace, Jocelyn. Acrobats stretched out below them, a cluster of twinkling lights. And above them, the stars of the desert sky winked 1,000 times as they glided over the sands. In the distance, the sea seemed to be made of the blackest ink. Swooping among the pyramids, Aladdin and Jasmine whooped with joy. With the carpet flew through an apple orchard, Aladdin reached out and grabbed an apple for the princess. A whole new world. He flipped it in with her lip-sided smile. The casual flip, the smile. Do you trust me? All it was exactly like the boy in the marketplace. Was it possible? She decided to find out. The carpet finally set them down on the roof of a tall Bagada, and they watched a fireworks display in the distance. It's also magical, Jasmine said. It's a shame Abu had to miss this. She exactly knows who that is, doesn't she? Nah, Aladdin said. He hates fireworks. He doesn't really like to fly. Aladdin caught himself in mid-sentence. It is you, Jasmine blurted. Why did you lie to me? Did you think I wouldn't figure it out? No, I mean, I hoped you wouldn't. That's not what I meant. Aladdin groped for words. His stomach churned. He couldn't let Jasmine know the truth. The truth is, I sometimes dress as a commodore to escape the pressure of palace life. Yeah, but I really am Prince Ali Ababwa. Jasmine looked unsure. Why didn't you just tell me? Well, you know, royally going into the city in disguise sounds a little strange, don't you think? Jocelyn. Perfect. He knew he had her now. After all, she had been in disguise when he met her. Not that strange, she said, resting her chin on Aladdin's shoulder. Together they watched the fireworks until they were too tired to keep their eyes open. The carpet then flew them back to the palace, hovering outside Jasmine's window. Jasmine stepped away onto the balcony, then turned away toward Aladdin. They smiled at each other over the railing until the carpet gave Aladdin a gentle nudge forward. His lips suddenly met hers. She didn't move a bit. In the soft light of the stars, Jocelyn, they shared a long kiss. Good night, my handsome prince, she said, backing into the chamber. Sleep well, princess, Aladdin replied. As she disappeared behind the curtain, Aladdin grinned. For the first time in my life, he muttered dreamily as the carpet floated down to the garden. Things are starting to go right. He snapped back to reality when he felt the hard grip of the rough hands on his shoulder. Turning around, Aladdin came face to face with Rasul. Before Aladdin could move, another guard slapped manacles on his wrists and ankles. Rasul stuffed a gag in his throat. Abu! Aladdin tried to yell through the gag. Abu, help! He looked around wildly until he spotted Abu hanging from a tree, tied up with a tight rope. The carpet tried to fly away, but another guard threw it into a cage. Jafar emerged from the shadows. On his shoulder, Iago was grinning. I'm afraid you've won out your welcome, Prince Abubu, Jafar hissed. Aladdin whirled around. He struggled with his chains. If he'd only reached his turban, the lamp was underneath, and the genie was inside the lamp. Jafar looked calmly at the guards. Make sure he is never found. Chapter 10. In the chill of the desert night, the guards rushed Aladdin to the sea by camel, and without a word, they pushed him over a cliff. Aladdin plunged into the water with a loud splash. In the dim moonlight, he could see his turban floating away. The lamp slowly emerged, then dropped to the sea floor. He kicked his legs, desperate to reach the lamp. He groped with his hands. There, he had it. But his strength was leaving him. He tried to rub the lamp, but he was weak. So weak. Splush! The genie materialized wearing a shower cap and holding a scrub brush. Never fails, he said. You get in a bath and there's a rub at the lamp. Hello? Instantly his smile disappeared. Aladdin was limp. Ow! Kid! Snap out of it! The genie pleaded, grabbing Aladdin. I can't help you unless you make a wish. You have to say, Genie, I want you to save my life. Got it? Aladdin's head bobbed ever so slightly. I'll take that as a yes. The genie let go of Aladdin and swarm in a circle. A whirlwind formed, spinning Aladdin upward. He burst through the surface, coughing and frailing. Before he could fall, the genie swooped him up and flew away. Don't scare me like that, the genie scolded. Aladdin looked around with excitement. He was alive, wet, humiliated, but alive. As he flew back toward Akrabar, Aladdin looked into the smiling face of his rescuer. Genie, thanks, was all he could say. Jasmine had never been happier. She couldn't stop humming, and she couldn't stop thinking about Aladdin. As she unbraided her hair in the bedroom mirror, she didn't notice her father walked in with Jafar behind him. Jasmine, the Sultan began. She turned around. Oh, Father, I just had the most wonderful time. I'm so happy. The Sultan stared straight ahead. You should be, Jasmine, he said in a dull voice. I have chosen a husband for you. You will marry Jafar. Jasmine gasped. Jafar stepped forward, the snake head in his staff glowing brightly, working its hypnotic spell on the Sultan. Never! Jasmine said. Father, I choose Prince Ali. Jafar laughed. Prince Ali left like all the others. But don't worry. Whenever he went, I'm sure he made quite a splash. Better check your crystal ball, Jafar, came a voice from the window. Jafar turned. Iago squawked in surprise. It was Aladdin. Jasmine ran to him. Prince Ali, she cried, are you all right? Yes, Aladdin said, but no thanks to Jafar. He tried to have me killed. Your Highness, Jafar said, he's obviously lying. Obviously lying, the Sultan repeated mechanically. Papa, what's wrong with you? Jasmine said with dismay. Aladdin leapt across the room toward Jafar. I know what's wrong. He pried the staff loose from Jafar and smashed the snake head on the floor. Oh my, the Sultan said, shaking his head. I feel so strange. Your Highness, Aladdin said, holding the broken staff in the air. Jafar's been controlling you with this. The Sultan's eyes narrowed. Jafar, you traitor! Guards, arrest Jafar at once! But Jafar had caught sight of something he hadn't noticed before. Peeking out of Aladdin's turban was the magic lamp. He lunged for it, but the Sultan's guards seized him. "This is not dead yet, boy," Jafar said, reaching into his robe. He pulled out a magic pellet and threw it on the floor. In a puff of smoke, he and Iago were gone, Jocelyn. Gone. "Find him!" the Sultan yelled to his guards. "I can't believe it. Jafar, my trusted counselor, plotting against me." His shocked expression changed to a smile when he turned back to Jasmine and Aladdin. "Can it be? My daughter has finally chosen a suitor?" Jasmine nodded, and the Sultan threw his arms around Aladdin. "Oh, you brilliant boy! You two will be wed at once. You'll be happy, prosperous, and then you, my boy, will become Sultan." Sultan? Aladdin swallowed nervously. This was supposed to be the happiest moment of his life. But he was suddenly worried. Iago flew around Jafar's lab in a plain brine panic. "We've got to get out of here," he said. "I've got to pack." But Jafar was deep in thought. He burst out with a sudden laugh and gripped Iago by the throat. "Prince Ali is nothing more than a ragged urchin Aladdin," he said. "He has the lamp, Iago." Iago's eyes narrowed. "Why, that little cheating!" "But you are going to relieve him of it," Jafar said with a sinister grin. "Listen closely." Iago leaned in as Jafar whispered his master plan. Chapter 11. Aladdin was given the most comfortable suite in the palace, but he rarely slept that night. He barely did. By dawn, he was pacing back and forth, holding his turban, the lamp inside. Abu in the carpet sat us outside the window, watching him with concern. "Huzzah!" the genie cried, popping out of the lamp. "Aladdin, you've just won the heart of the princess. What are you going to do next?" He lowered his voice to a whisper. "Psst. Your next line is, I'm going to free the genie." "Genie," Aladdin said sadly, "I'm sorry, but I can't. They want to make me Sultan. No, they want to make Prince Ali Sultan. The only reason anyone thinks I'm worth anything is because of you. What if they find out the truth? What if Jasmine finds out? She'll hate me." Aladdin looked into the genie's pale, disappointed face. "Genie, I need you. Without you, I'm just Aladdin." The genie tried to control his anger. "I understand. After all, you've lied to everyone else. Hey, I was beginning to feel left out. Now, if you'll excuse me, master." With that, he disappeared into the lamp. "Genie," Aladdin called out, "I'm really sorry." The genie's lips struck out of the spout and razzed him. "Fine," Aladdin snapped, throwing a pillow over the lamp. "Then just stay in there." As he stomped away, he could see Abu and the carpet watching him from the window. "What are you guys looking at?" As Abu and the carpet turned away, Jasmine's voice came from the menagerie. "Ali, will you please come here? Hurry." "Coming, Jasmine," Aladdin called out the window. Aladdin's becoming kind of a mean guy, isn't he? That's what happens when you lie. He rushed outside. As he ran to the menagerie in the direction of Jasmine's voice, he passed a group of flamingos in a pond. At least they all looked like flamingos. Iago snickered to himself. His imitation of Jasmine had worked, and his flamingo disguise was perfect, thanks to Jafar's magic. When Aladdin was gone, he hurried into the empty room and quickly stole the lamp. Hooking it with his beak, he flew outside and straight back to Jafar's lab. Oh no. Ali, there you are, said Jasmine. I've been looking all over for you. Aladdin turned around, puzzled. Abu and the carpet scampered to their side. Jasmine was running toward him. But how could she have been there, looking all over when she had just... Hurry, she said, taking him by the hand. Father's about to make the wedding announcements. They climbed the stairs of the tower. They overlooked the courtyard. Townspeople clogged every square inch, trying desperately to see the royal couple. Jasmine stepped onto the platform and took her place next to her father. Smiling, the Sultan announced to the crowd, Ladies and gentlemen, my daughter has chosen a suitor, Prince Ali Ababwa. But Iago has stolen the lamp. Something good's not about to happen. All right, Jocelyn. Chapter 12. High in another tower that overlooked the courtyard, Jafar and Iago watched as Aladdin was about to step toward the roaring crowd. Look at them, cheering that little pipsqueak, cried Iago. Let them cheer, Jafar said as he held the lamp tightly. Begin to rub it. At last, he said, the power is mine. In a puff of smoke, the genie appeared. Al, if you're going to apologize, The genie's jaw dropped when he saw Jafar. I am your master now, Jafar said. I was afraid of that. Keep quiet, snapped Jafar. And now, slave, grant me my first wish. I wish to be Sultan. As Aladdin stared down from the platform, the crowd suddenly became hazy. Clouds swirled over the palace, and with a loud tearing sound, the canopy over the platform was ripped off. Jasmine and Aladdin looked around in confusion as a strange magical light engulfed the Sultan. And when it stopped, the Sultan was on the floor in his underwear. The crowd gasped. Ah! There was someone else on the stand now. Someone tall, dark, and dressed in the Sultan's robes. He held a snake staff in his right hand. Jafar! Aladdin exclaimed. Jafar turned with a sneer. Sultan Jafar to you. What manner of trickery is this? The Sultan demanded. Finders keepers, Jafar said. I have the ultimate power now. A shadow fell over the courtyard and everyone looked up. Aladdin's breath caught in his throat. Abu and the carpet clenched each other in terror. Looming over them like an evil giant was the genie. He placed his hands on the palace as if he were trying to crush it. Genie, stop! Aladdin shouted. What are you doing? The genie's eyes were full of sadness. Sorry, kid, he said. I've got a new master now. With a mighty heave, he lifted the entire palace off the ground. The people of Agrabah scattered, screaming as debris fell around them. The genie then flew in a mountain high above the city and set the palace down there. Jafar let out a deep triumph laugh. Ha 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 ha! Now you miserable wenches, bow to me! We will never bow to you, Jasmine replied. Aladdin and the Sultan stood by her. Then you will cower, Jafar said. He whirled around to face the genie. My second wish is to be the most powerful sorcerer on earth. His snake staff began to glow and gleam. Lightning cracked around it. Raja let out a roar and lunged at Jafar. Roar! Jafar waved his staff, and in midair, Raja was transformed into a kitten. As Raja landed softly on his paws, Jafar glared at Jasmine and Aladdin. Take a look at your precious Prince Ali. Or should I say, Aladdin. A bolt of light shot from the staff. It surrounded Aladdin and Abu, and instantly Abu became a monkey again. Aladdin's robe and slippers and turban disappeared. He fell to the floor dressed in his old rags. He's nothing more than a worthless, lying street rat. Jasmine looked at him confused and hurt. Ali? Jasmine, I'm sorry, Aladdin said. Face it, boy, you don't belong here, Jafar said. Where does he belong? Could it be the ends of the earth? Iago taunted. Works for me, Jafar cried as he waved his staff again. Aladdin and Abu suddenly leviated off the ground and into the open window of a narrow tower. In an instant, the tower rocketed over the horizon. The carpet sped after it. Jasmine watched in horror as the tower vanished over the horizon, and the genie sadly turned away with a devious laugh. Ha 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 ha! Jafar shouted, At last, Iago! Akrabar is mine! Chapter 13. When Aladdin awoke, Jocelyn, he was cold. Freezing cold. As he made his way out of a snowbank, an icy wind whipped snow into his face. Where was he? Through the raging blizzard, he could see the lowering tower lying in pieces, half covered with snow. Just beyond it, a cliff plunged downward into darkness. A crash. That was all he remembered. He must have been thrown out of the tower unconscious. A brown lamp, Jocelyn, caught his attention. It was a lump, not a lamp. Abu! He called from the chattering teeth. He raced over and dug his pet out of the snow. Are you all right? Shivering, Abu nodded weakly. Aladdin tucked Abu into his vest. Abu, this is all my fault. I should have freed the genie when I had the chance. Somehow, I've got to go back and set things straight. He felt a tickling sensation on his leg. Spinning around, he saw the carpet reaching toward him. He was caught beneath a huge chunk of the tower. Aladdin tried to pull the carpet free, but it was stuck really tight. He and Abu started digging a trench around it, but the tower began to teeter. Look out! Aladdin shouted. The tower began rolling toward them. Calculating quickly, Aladdin ducked, curling Abu into his arms. The tower rolled over them, right where there was a window opening. Unharmed, they watched as the tower plunged over the cliff. Freed from the tower, the carpet scooped up Aladdin and Abu and flew above the clouds. All right, cried Aladdin, now back to Akrabar. Jafar loved the view from his new throne room. The palace was where it belonged now, on a mountaintop, not in the midst of the rubble. He happily sipped from his wineglass while the genie massaged his feet. The former sultan was now suspended from the ceiling like a minaret. He was dressed in a jester's outfit, and the Jafar and Iago snickered at the ridiculous sight. Raja, still a kitten, paced anxiously in a cage. Jasmine sat at the window, her wrist shackled, her eyes filled with sadness. Jafar reached out with his staff. He hooked her shackles and pulled her close. It pains me to see you reduced to this, Jasmine. You should be on the arm of the most powerful man in the world. With a wave of his staff, he made her chains varnish. A crown appeared on her head. Why, with you as my queen. Jasmine took his glass and threw the wine in his face. Never! Jafar bolted up from the throne. Temper, Jasmine, scolded Jafar. You know what happens when you misbehave. I'll teach you some respect. He glared at the genie. Genie, I have decided to make my final wish. I wish for Princess Jasmine to fall desperately in love with me. No, Jasmine said, blacking away. Master, the genie said, I can't do that. You will do what I order you to do, slave. Jafar roared as he grabbed the genie's beard. Nobody noticed Aladdin and Abu peeking into the throne room window behind them. Nobody except Jasmine. She was about to scream when Aladdin shushed her with a finger over his mouth. He and Abu and the carpet climbed silently into the room. Jasmine thought fast. Jafar, she said with a seductive smile, I never realized how incredibly handsome you are. Jafar spun around, his jaw hung open in disbelief. And so did the genies. That's better, Jafar said. He slinked towards Jasmine, a cocky smile on his face. Now tell me more about myself. You're tall, dark. Jasmine could see Aladdin, Abu, and the carpet sneaking toward the lamp. Now the genie saw them too. He was trying to strife an exciting giggle. Go on, Jafar said. Abu was inches from Iago now, and Iago was turning around. Jasmine quickly put her arms around Jafar, locking him in place. You're well dressed, she continued. You've stolen my heart. With a quick leap, I know you're getting excited, right, Jocelyn? With a quick leap, Abu grabbed Iago off his perch and put a hand over his mouth. They both tumbled to the ground. And the street rats? Jafar said, drawing closer to Jasmine. What street rat? Jasmine asked. Crash! Abu and Iago knocked into a table, sending a pot to the ground. Jafar started to turn, and Jasmine had no choice but to pull him close and kiss him. Passionately and on the lips. Now it was Aladdin's chance for action, but he couldn't move. All he could do was stare. There she was, the girl with whom he had risked his life, kissing him. Jafar pulled back. He was dazed with joy until he saw the reflection of Aladdin in Jasmine's crown. Can you see Abu? You, he said, whirling around in blind rage. His arm snapped forward, pointing his staff at Aladdin. Zap! A flash of light struck Aladdin in the chest. He flew backward, crashing into a pile of jewels. How many times do I have to kill you, boy? Jafar said, drawing his arm back for a second shot. Jasmine leaped at him, pushing his arm aside. You deceiving shrew! Jafar snarled. Your time is up! He turned his staff on Jasmine. Instantly, she was trapped inside a giant hourglass. The upper chamber was full of sand, and it slowly spilled through the opening onto her. There was more than enough to bury her alive. Zap! With a stroke of the staff, Jafar turned Abu into a cymbal-clanking toy monkey. Zap! The carpet began to unravel, and Aladdin ran to stop it. Jafar called out, Things are unraveling fast, boy. This is all your fault, street rat. You never should have come back. Zap! Aladdin jumped back. A sword clattered to the ground beside him, then another. He looked up. Dozens of razor-sharp swords fell from the ceiling. Jafar gestured again, and a wall of fire burst from the floor. Aladdin grabbed one of the fallen swords. Are you afraid to fight me yourself, you cowardly snake? Aladdin said, battling away the swords as they fell. Jafar made his way toward Aladdin, forcing him to closer to the fire. A snake, am I? Perhaps you'd like to see how snake-like I can be. Jafar held out his snake staff with both hands, and it began to glow and grow. Coming. How's Jasmine going to get out of that? It began to grow, coming to hideous life, wrapping Jafar himself into its skin. Swelling, hissing, Jafar became a monstrous cobra, his head rising toward the ceiling. The flames rose with him, becoming a ring of deadly coils surrounding Aladdin. With an unearthly roar, Jafar lunged. Aladdin swung his sword. Shriek! He struck two of Jafar's fangs, which clattered onto the floor. Rickum, rackum, stick that sword into that snake, the genie shouted. You stay out of this, Jafar hissed. He lunged again, knocking Aladdin to the floor. The sword flew out of his hands. Ali! The Sultan cried, watching helplessly from above. Jasmine! Aladdin roared away, catching a glimpse of the hourglass. The sand had risen swiftly, covering all but Jasmine's head. Without his sword, there was only one chance. Aladdin ran for the window and leapt onto the balcony. Jafar slithered after him. Quickly, Aladdin ran back in, then ducked out another window. Jafar followed from window to window, tangling his long body onto a knot. He shrieked with pain. Aladdin picked up his sword and ran toward the hourglass. Jasmine's nose was barely above the sand, her eyes wide with fear. Aladdin drew back the sword, ready to smash the glass. With a resounding boom, Jafar pulled down the wall. He was free, and he threw his coils around Aladdin. Aladdin's sword was caught in midair, and he struggled to get loose. You thought you could outwit the most powerful being on earth, Jafar bellowed. Aladdin winched left and right. In the corner of the room, the genie watched helplessly. The genie! How's Aladdin going to get out of this one? Thinking fast, Aladdin said, You're not so powerful. The genie has more power than you will ever have. He gave you power, and he could take it away. The genie ducked behind a pillar. Al, what are you doing? Why are you bringing me into this? Face it, Jafar, you're still just second, Aladdin continued. Jafar loosened his coils. He turned his slimy face to the genie. You're right. His power does exceed my own, but not for long. Aladdin fell to the floor as Jafar slithered across the room. Slave, Jafar called to the genie. I'm ready to make my third wish. I wish to be an all-powerful genie. The genie looked at Aladdin, his blue face now chalk white. Your wish, he said in a small, quivering voice, is my command. Chapter 14. The genie gestured. A swirling current of energy encircled Jafar, and he began to change shape. The fire disappeared. His cobra body became wider and wider until he took on roundness of a genie. Yes, Jafar shrieked. The power! The absolute power! Quickly, Aladdin picked up his sword and smashed the hourglass. Jasmine slid forward with a chastising sound. What have you done? She asked Aladdin when Aladdin pulled her free. Aladdin smiled. Trust me. The universe is an open book before me, Jafar yelled. Mine to command, to control. The dome of the palace exploded as Jafar rose to the sky. Before he could say another word, gold shackles clamped around his wrists, just like the ones the genie wore. A lamp began to materialize beneath him, new and shiny. What is happening? Jafar demanded. You wanted to be a genie. Aladdin picked up the new lamp and held it out to Jafar. You got it, and everything that goes with it. Jafar's legs were now a trail of vapor, a trail that disappeared until the lamp out. No, he said, his eyes bulging out in terror. No! Screaming with anguish, Jafar reached his hand upward. His fingers clasped Iago's feet. What? Hey! Let go! No! Iago screamed. With a dull thump, Jafar and Iago were sucked into the lamp. Everyone in the throne room fell into an awe silence. Jasmine, the Sultan, and the genie stared at Aladdin. Phenomenal cosmic powers, Aladdin said with a shrug. Itty bitty living space. The genie let out a loud crack. You little genius! Instantly, the room began to return to normal. Back on his feet, the Sultan sighed with pleasure as his robes materialized on him. Abu became a live monkey again, and Raja grew back into a tiger, breaking free of a small cage, and the carpet looked brand new. The genie grabbed the lamp and went to the balcony. Shall we? 10,000 years in the Cave of Wonders ought to chill him out. He wound up, hurled the lamp, and sending it end over end toward the desert. Smiling proudly, the genie flew outside. He grew to a gigantic shape, picked up the entire palace, and began carrying it back to its rightful place. Woo! You think that lamp's going to be found again? Chapter 15. Later that day, when Akbar had returned back to normal, Jasmine and Aladdin stood on the throne room balcony. Jasmine, Aladdin said softly, I'm sorry I lied to you about being a prince. Jasmine nodded. I know why you did it. I guess this is goodbye. Jasmine turned away. That stupid law! It isn't fair! Slowly and tearfully, she faced Aladdin again. I love you. Suddenly, the genie popped through the window. Ow, no problem. You've got one wish left. Just say the word and you're a prince again. But Genie, Aladdin said, what about your freedom? Al, you're in love. You're not going to find another girl like this in a million years. Believe me, I've looked. Aladdin looked from the genie to Jasmine. He knew how much freedom meant now. Not only to the genie, but to Jasmine and to himself. Just as she needed to be free of the Sultan's laws, Aladdin needed to be free too. Free to be himself. Jasmine, I do love you, he finally said, but I can't pretend to be something I'm not. Jasmine bowed her head. I understand. Genie, Aladdin said, I wish for your freedom. It's about time I started keeping my promises. In a flash, the genie's gold cuffs vanished. He was stunned. Quick, wish for something, anything. Say, I want the Nile. I wish for the Nile? Aladdin said. No way, said the genie with a laugh. I'm free, he shouted, his face lighting up. I'm free, I'm off to see the world. Congratulations, the Sultan said, peeking out behind him. Genie, I'm gonna miss you, Aladdin said. Me too, Al, the genie replied with a fond smile. No matter what anybody says, you'll always be a prince to me. That's right, the Sultan agreed. You certainly proved your worth as far as I'm concerned. If it's the law that's the problem, then what do we need? It's a new law. Jasmine looked at him stunned. Father! From this day forth, the princess shall marry whoever she seems worthy. I choose you, Aladdin, Jasmine cried instantly. Aladdin was ecstatic. Call me Al, he said. He and Jasmine burst out laughing. Aladdin took her in her arms, and the two of them began twirling around the balcony. Well, the genie said with a huge smile, I can't do any more damage around here. And now, I'm out of here. Bye-bye, you crazy lovebirds. Like a rocket, the genie launched himself into the sky, and the Sultan followed him with his eyes until the genie disappeared over the horizon. Aladdin and Jasmine didn't even notice him leave. As they shared a long, dreamy kiss, they didn't notice much of anything except each other. Well, that's the end of Aladdin. And that is the end of our princess themed month of June. So this month, if you bared with us on these long princess stories, Jocelyn has been enjoying it. The next couple of weeks, we're going to do a couple of short videos, and it's only going to be once a week. This was only this month to have twice a week because it was such long stories to split. So we'll see you again on Friday of next week, and it'll be July. So we haven't decided what we're going to read yet, but it's going to be a short one. So we'll see you then, and have a blessed week. Bye-bye.